They cut her off mid-brief, and in the war room the silence landed like a dropped blade. Major Lena Cross stood at the head of the table, one hand still resting on the laser pointer, the map of the coastal city frozen behind her in red and blue overlays. She had been explaining the final approach, timing, choke points, civilian density, when the feed on the far wall crackled and went black. Around the table, operators shifted, instinctively reaching for radios that suddenly screamed with overlapping voices. Someone swore under their breath. This was not how a briefing was supposed to end. "Hold," Lena said, calm but sharp. The room listened. It always did. She keyed her headset, listening past the noise until one voice cut through, strained and urgent. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. The target compound is reacting early. They've taken hostages out onto the roof." Lena closed her eyes for half a second, recalculating. Early reaction meant inside knowledge. Inside knowledge meant leaks, or something worse. The terrorist leader, a man known publicly as Kareem al-Sakr, stepped into view on the drone feed as it flickered back online. He was thinner than the intelligence photos suggested, his eyes too alert, scanning the rooftops as if he could see through the night itself. He dragged one of the hostages forward and shouted into the darkness, his voice carried by a loudspeaker. He wasn't making demands, he was calling someone out. "I know you are listening," he said in accented English. "Send her, the woman who plans your deaths." Lena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's new," the comms officer muttered. Lena didn't answer. Her mind was already working through old files, buried memories. Kareem had been active for years, surviving raids that should have ended him. He knew tactics too well. He had escaped traps that were mathematically perfect. Now he was asking for her, specifically. That narrowed the field in a way she didn't like. "They're patching him through," the tech said, fingers flying. "Audio only." The speakers crackled. Kareem's breathing came through, steady and confident. "You cut me off earlier," he said, almost amused. "That was rude." Lena leaned forward, elbows on the table, her face unreadable. "You interrupted my briefing. That was rude too." A low murmur rippled through the room. This wasn't standard protocol. Negotiators usually handled this part, but Lena had written half the protocols they followed, and she knew when to bend them. "You've studied me," she continued. "You know how this ends. Let the hostages go." Kareem laughed softly. "I know many things," he said. "I know your satellites, your drones, your teams waiting just out of sight. I know the names of men you sent who never returned." He paused, savoring it. "But what I know best is you." Lena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "If you knew me," she said, "you wouldn't be holding civilians." There was a shift in Kareem's tone then, something sharper, more focused. "Do you remember a village called Kara 12 years ago?" he asked. The room went still. Lena remembered. She remembered dust and fire, the way the night sky had glowed orange for hours, a mission gone sideways, a code name used once and buried deep. Kareem had continued. "You were planned that operation. You were younger, angry, brilliant." "Get to your point," Lena said, her voice cool. "I will," he replied, "but first, let me prove I already have." He took a breath. When he spoke again, he used a single word, a name that had not been spoken outside a locked room in over a decade. "Valkyrie." The effect was immediate. The comms officer froze. One of the operators swore aloud. That code name wasn't just classified, it was erased. Lena felt the past surge up like a cold tide. Valkyrie had been her designation back when she wasn't supposed to exist, when her role was deniable, off the books, deadly. Fewer handfuls of people in the world knew it, fewer were still alive. Kareem continued, his voice now stripped of bravado. "You were Valkyrie, the one who planned the night my brother died." His breathing quickened, anger bleeding through. "I have hunted you since." Lena stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor, the only sound in the room. She leaned closer to the microphone. "If you know that name," she said, "then you know what comes next." There was a long pause. On the drone feed, Kareem's head turned slightly, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. His grip on the hostage loosened.
I have read every report, every after-action summary. You never leave loose ends. That's right, and you've just created one too many. For the first time, fear crept into Kareem's voice. You won't kill me, he said, almost pleading now. You'll need answers. Lena didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. You already have your answer. This ends with you alive or not. Either way, it ends now. Seconds stretched. The room held its breath. On the rooftop, Kareem looked out into the darkness, into the invisible net closing around him. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. The weapon clattered to the concrete. He pushed the hostages toward the door and dropped to his knees. I surrender, the words heavy and final. I will not run from Valkyrie. Cheers erupted in the war room, sharp and sudden, but Lemur didn't react. She remained standing, eyes on the feed, as operators swarmed the rooftop and secured the target. Only when Kareem was in cuffs did she exhale, a quiet release she barely allowed herself. Later, as the room emptied and the adrenaline faded, one of the younger analysts approached her. Ma'am, suddenly carefully, how did he know? Lena looked back at the map, at the lines she had drawn and redrawn over a lifetime of invisible wars. Some names, she said, don't stay buried. She gathered her notes, the brief that had been cut short, and headed for the door. Outside, the night waited, silent, watchful, and somewhere in that silence, a code name had done what armies could not. If you enjoyed this story and want more intense thrillers and suspenseful adventures, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with friends who love a good mystery.